Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending the Energy Storage Series webinar. My name is Madeline, and I'm excited to kick things off with the installation tips and tricks presentation today. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then dive into a few things that you may already know and have forgotten or may not necessarily be considering with a storage installation as opposed to a solar-only installation. So I want to kind of review those few little tidbits that will help you time manage and set expectations with how an installation will go for you and for your customer. Again, my name is Madeline, and I am the Energy Storage Manager here at Soligent. I have been working in the solar plus storage space since 2016, and particularly from an installation standpoint, products have changed a lot over the last few years. It's funny because some of our products, like if you think about the Outback Radiant or the Schneider XW, those have been around for a really long time. And in some ways they haven't changed much. But in a lot of other ways, we have seen new brands come to market, and whenever there are new product variations or new rollouts, things are upgraded and more functionality is released. So I really want to focus on how newer versions of products are changing and improving in ways that you guys can prepare for that. So I want to ensure that homeowners, installers, account managers, anyone really in the solar industry, I want to help you be confident in understanding storage, understanding how it pairs with solar, in what application, understanding how to set expectations with your customers. And the best way for me to do this is by building relationships with all of the different manufacturing partners to ensure that the equipment options are right for you and right for your project, because there are a lot of different products on the market and different solutions. So I want to make sure that you're getting exactly what is right for each site and each system. So when you prepare for an installation, if you consider a solar install on its own, visibility and monitoring may not be on the top of the priority list of a homeowner. Maybe they just want to stick some panels on the roof and not really worry about it. Or maybe they want to set this on a second property like a vacation rental and not really worry about it. With batteries, we want to make sure the connectivity between the solar and the storage is strong, so that our batteries are never discharging too far, or if they are, that you can be monitored and notified. So what are the different ways that our systems can be connected? There are a few different options. So Wi-Fi is one method that the monitor of your system can communicate to your house. Let's say if you're browsing on a mobile app or a web-based app. So you want to make sure that your Wi-Fi connection is strong, and you may need an extender. So some sort of device, external device, to ensure that the Wi-Fi signal is strong enough from where your array is, where your battery is, to where your home is, etc. Another option is hardwiring. Ethernet cables are still very prominent, and hardwiring your equipment together is another option. So take that as option number 2. And again, each of your different solutions, be it from Endphase, SolarEdge, Generac, Sonin, etc., you name it, they may use different communication protocols, different sort of connectivity requirements. So check which solution you need depending on your brand. And then another option is cellular. So some require cell connection between the devices to communicate, and this would often come with a data plan. So you're buying a cell modem with a 5-year data plan, and you could buy it an AT&T or a Verizon or a different data plan based on the network. So make sure if you have a solution that requires cellular connectivity that you have service coverage in your area. So keep that in mind in the, when you're pitching this, and as well as when you're actually installing, to make sure that the reality of the installation is as you expected with the discussion for sales. Software, let's talk a little bit about software, and we'll dive into firmware more afterwards. But because a lot of the hardware over the years has remained the same, as utilities change and as AHJs change, the requirements of this hardware may need to also change. So a firmware update is the way that old original hardware is modified and upgraded to stay up to code and up to speed with your most current version. And this firmware updates are something that happens with many electronic devices. If you have a smartwatch, if you have a cell phone, etc., the provider of these devices is constantly improving the product, and the hardware is able to be upgraded via these firmware sets. So when you're doing a storage installation, make sure you're giving yourself enough time and understanding the firmware updates needed for your equipment prior to getting on site, because sometimes firmware updates can take some time. So you want to set expectations with yourself and with your install crews on how much time you need for your firmware modifications. And then support. If this is your first battery-based system, don't sweat it. There are support lines and different types of tools for installers to get what they need during an installation. And I just want to make sure that for anyone that's working with batteries, they feel supported all the way throughout their installation. So let's dig into firmware a little bit more. On the left, we have some examples of hardware. So an Endphase N-Charge battery is a physical battery device. A SolarEdge HG Wave inverter or an Energy Hub inverter, that's also hardware. It's a physical piece of equipment that has electronics inside that can run off of different software. And how do we get new software packages sent to these devices? It's the firmware upgrades. So firmware is what gets sent to the hardware in order to run new software. And this is really important to keep your equipment at the latest version possible. And so how do you do this? We're sending a data package over the cloud in order to update the equipment to operate the way we want to. And we can send this via our smartphone or on a computer. You can send the firmware updates remotely. Most of the time, your firmware upgrades are happening in the cloud. So keep in mind that when you're doing an install, you want whatever your hardware is to have the most up-to-date firmware so that all of the equipment that's on your roof or being installed on the wall can communicate effectively. When you're considering a solar installation only, often, 99% of the time, you're putting your PV directly onto the main service panel. Relatively straightforward. You've done it a million times. However, when you're adding batteries, many times when you add batteries, you're not landing the battery on the main service panel. You're probably landing the battery on a backup load sub panel. So in our case, if we have a backup load sub panel, you're going to have to install a secondary panel in order to put the batteries there. So in this diagram, I'm making some inferences here, but this is a battery, this is a battery, this is a battery, and this is the smart switch. Because these battery runs are going into this service panel, the one on the left, I'm going to assume that this is the backup load subpanel, meaning this subpanel contains the loads that are going to be powered during the batteries when an outage occurs. The next panel is the main panel. And this is still going to be connected to the smart switch because any excess power when the grid is up can still be fed through the main. But when the grid goes down, the loads on the main are going to shut down, and then only the loads on the backup subpanel are going to remain. So you want to be able to prepare for a storage installation by identifying where your backup load subpanel is and make sure that you can wire all your backup loads. So taking this into consideration as an additional step when adding batteries is that for partial home backup, you need to consider the time and equipment necessary to install a backup load subpanel. And this is something that you wouldn't necessarily have to be considering on a solar only installation. So let's just go through a few of our little tips and tricks for each of our individual systems. So the Sony Core is one of our sleekest, lightest, kind of most bare bones solution. It is on the affordable side. So you can get 10 kilowatt hours for your homeowner with up to 6 kilowatts of PV. So this solution is an indoor mounted solution and really when I say it can be done by one person, it really can. The enclosure itself comes with the inverter already installed, but the batteries are separate. So when you have your enclosure, you mount it to the wall and you add your batteries, and everything is modular. So you don't really have to worry about these things being too heavy. I mean, in other cases, we'll see in a few other solutions, even just the battery by itself could be in the 300 pounds. So this is 350 pounds for the entire solution, and it can be done easily and quickly by one installer in an afternoon. So Sony Core, sleek, easy, really a great kind of simple backup solution for your AC coupled customers. Enphase, Encharge, and Npower is the Enphase storage solution. This can support both the IQ and the M series inverters, however, microinverters. The firmware must be updated for the M series equipment prior to installation. So there is a great white pager on the equipment and steps you need to take to upgrade the firmware. But again, make sure if you're approaching a retrofit customer for the M series platform that you're preparing them for whatever system upgrades they need in order for the new Enphase storage to communicate with the older legacy M series equipment that's already on their roof. And this equipment is on the heavier side. So the Encharge 10, which is displayed here, which is the most common battery solution from Endphase that we're seeing, is 341 pounds. So take that into consideration when you're going to a job site that you have some sort of forklift or a hand truck in order to maneuver these products. Consider that when you're deciding where you're going to install it. And then even the smart switch is 85 pounds. So I want to kind of set those expectations that for larger equipment, you want to be able to have enough installers on hand or the proper tools in order to maneuver this. The batteries and the smart switch have handles. They're handles designed specifically for the Npower and specifically for the Encharge. Some people love them, some people prefer not to use them. So if you want to try out the handles, you can consider that for your next Enphase storage installation. Generac has another more modular solution, if you will. So the enclosure itself for the batteries is 115 pounds. So not too cumbersome. And then each battery module that goes inside, there are between 3 and 6 battery modules inside the battery enclosure, is 55 pounds. So again, the fact that these are all separated means maneuvering them is not so tricky. The inverter itself, 62 pounds, like inverters you've used in the past. So don't really have to get too crazy with the necessary, how would you phrase this? Equipment that you need to assist lifting this and mounting this, because it's not too bad. The Generac solution is DC coupled right now, so it will be all on the Generac line, no retrofits. You would just go straight onto the roof with your snapper module level rapid shutdown devices, your PV links, inverter, etc. So straightforward solution, scalable, up to 2 battery enclosures. I could dive into all these solutions in a little more depth, but I really want to just focus this webinar on the physical installation and what you should know about how to kind of maneuver these pieces of equipment and what you should prepare for. The Simplify and Solar access unit. The access unit is the name for this pre-wired, pre-installed solution. So you can buy from Soligent a Solar converter and the individual Simplify batteries, but then you would have to wire them yourselves and put them in your own enclosure. When you get the access unit, it's all done ahead of time. However, the unit is more than 600 pounds. So the case, even before you add your batteries, is 600 pounds. We're using the metal case only moving forward. That's the primary battery from Simplify. So you can get a pre-wired access with 4, 5, or 6 batteries. So that being said, definitely need to plan with a homeowner how you're going to be maneuvering and where in the home you're going to be putting a 600+ pound enclosure with all of your equipment. So that's something I want to consider. Wiring Solar is straightforward. You can AC or DC couple it on this exact device. So this system is relatively flexible in terms of if you already have someone with solar installed, not a problem. If you're doing a new installation, not a problem. It's sort of a one size fits all option between the 4, 5, and 6 battery solutions from the Simplify Access. Schneider, the XW line has been around for a very long time. The Pro is our most current model. And the inverter itself is 121 pounds. So, I mean, compared to the Generac inverter, it's definitely a little bit larger. And then you're going to be pairing this XW Pro with a power distribution panel, which is your load center where you're going to be doing all of your wiring. So Schneider just launched a really, really helpful design and commissioning guide to help new installers have a good understanding of incorporating batteries into their systems. So the design guide shows you different stackabilities between how much PV you want to put on these or how much power you want. There is a lot of flexibility from the Schneider components, so you really can kind of mix and match between charge controllers and inverters to make this work for your various system sizes. The commissioning guide really is a step-by-step tool to help you kind of go through all of the prompts when installing a system. So that's another really good tool to help. You can stack up to 3 inverters or 20 kilowatts on a single power distribution panel. So it's scalable for an individual backup load panel. I mean, frankly, if you're doing 3 inverters with 20 kilowatts, that's pretty achievable with a whole home backup if desired. You don't have to have a backup loads panel. And this is just another diagram of what this installation would look like. So this rectangle on the right of our first PDP solution, this is the full PDP. So this is your wiring box for everything. The boxes underneath are going to be the connection kits. So this is where you're going to be able to add the wiring to your from your next additional inverter. If you know that your home only needs 6.8 kilowatts of power, then you can do a single XW inverter with a mini power distribution panel. So the mini PDP just sits right underneath the XW Plus. But if you were doing 2 or more inverters, you may want to go with the PDP in order to pair 2 or 3 inverters and be able to wire them in this box. And that's it for now. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I really appreciate you spending time with me and listening to me talk about storage. So until next time, thanks very much.